Welcome to the Empowerment Hour. I'm your host, Joss Blake, and today we're diving deep into one of humanity's most elusive quests, the pursuit of happiness. Picture this. You're scrolling through social media, seeing endless posts of people proclaiming their joy, their gratitude, their best life ever. Americans, in particular, seem obsessed with projecting positivity. We smile constantly, greet each other with enthusiasm, and radiate confidence and optimism. But here's the kicker. Despite all this emphasis on happiness, Americans don't actually rank at the top of global happiness surveys. In fact, we're not even close. So what's going on? Are we just really good at faking it? Or is there something fundamentally flawed about how we understand happiness itself? Today, we're going to unpack the fascinating science behind what truly makes us happy, why money isn't the answer you think it is, how your brain chemistry might be sabotaging your joy, and why being too happy might actually ruin your life. Yes, you heard that right. Too much happiness can be dangerous. We'll explore cutting-edge research that reveals the surprising truth about social connections, discover why your smartphone is literally hijacking your brain's pleasure centers, and learn why fictional detectives are always grumpy. Plus, we'll tackle the ultimate question. Do animals experience happiness the way we do? And if curious, science-backed content like this lights up your brain, then you need to check out Skoob, the AI-powered podcast app that churns out short, binge-worthy episodes tailored to your interests. From neuroscience and psychology to philosophy and personal growth, Skoob makes learning fast, fascinating, and seriously fun. Download Skoob from the App Store or Play Store and transform the way you explore happiness and everything else that makes us human. Ready? Let's dive into the science of joy. Let's start with a shocking revelation that'll make you question everything about American culture. We live in a society that practically worships positivity. Walk down any American street and you'll be bombarded with smiles, enthusiastic greetings, and an almost aggressive optimism that seems to permeate every interaction. This isn't just cultural politeness, it's backed by science. Research shows that smiling, as long as it's genuine, actually triggers positive emotions internally. It's like a biochemical feedback loop. And here's the really cool part. These positive expressions are literally contagious. When you smile at someone, they're hardwired to smile back. It's called mood contagion, and it's a well-documented phenomenon in social psychology. Scientists have discovered that joyful feelings can actually ripple through entire social networks. Imagine happiness as a virus, the good kind, that spreads from person to person, even affecting people who are only remotely connected to the original source of joy. Your good mood today might brighten the day of someone you've never even met, simply through this chain reaction of positivity. Contemporary psychologists argue that positive emotions like gratitude, contentment, and self-assurance don't just make you feel good. They literally extend your lifespan and boost your physical health. People who report positive feelings engage more actively in social interactions, creating a protective buffer against depression, which is a documented risk factor for numerous physical ailments. This research has become so compelling that economists have started measuring national success through happiness indices rather than just looking at gross national product. Think about that. We're literally trying to quantify joy as a measure of societal progress. But here's where it gets weird. Despite all this emphasis on positivity, despite living in one of the world's wealthiest nations, despite our cultural obsession with happiness, Americans consistently fail to top global happiness rankings. A comprehensive meta-analysis of over 100 studies on self-reported happiness found Americans ranking 23rd globally. 23rd. We're trailing behind countries like the Netherlands, Denmark, Malaysia, the Bahamas, Austria, and even Finland, a country traditionally known for its reserved, almost stoic population. And here's an even more troubling statistic. Americans consume about 2/3 of the world's antidepressants. These medications are literally the most frequently prescribed drugs in the United States. So what's the disconnect? Are we medicating our way to happiness, or are we so unhappy that we need pharmaceutical intervention just to function? The research suggests it might be both. The widespread use of antidepressants creates a bizarre paradox in happiness surveys. Do people report feeling happy because medication helps them achieve that state, or do they feel fundamentally unhappy because they require chemical assistance to experience positive emotions? This American happiness paradox reveals something profound about the difference between projecting happiness and actually experiencing it. We've become experts at performing joy while struggling to achieve it. Now let's tackle the big question that keeps everyone awake at night. Can money buy happiness? The answer is both simpler and more complex than you might expect. Researchers use something called subjective well-being questionnaires to measure happiness. Participants rate their agreement with statements like, "I feel pleased with the way I am," "I feel that life is very rewarding," and "I am optimistic about the future," on a scale from 0 to 10. By comparing these scores across different income groups, scientists can determine whether money correlates with happiness. Here's what they've discovered. Money does make you happier, but only up to a certain point. It's like a happiness ceiling that wealth simply can't break through. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine an American single mother earning $12,000 a year who suddenly wins $500,000 in the lottery. This windfall creates a significant, lasting boost in her subjective well-being. She can now provide for her children without going into debt, afford health care, secure housing, and eliminate the constant stress of financial survival. For her, money literally transforms her quality of life. Now imagine a top executive earning $250,000 annually who wins $1 million. Initially, he might feel euphoric, but studies show this happiness boost is temporary. Within months, the luxuries, the better car, larger home, premium wines, become routine. What economists call hedonic adaptation kicks in, and he returns to his baseline happiness level. This phenomenon explains why lottery winners often report being no happier than before within a few years of their windfall. The human brain is remarkably good at adapting to new circumstances, neutralizing the happiness impact of material improvements. But here's where it gets really interesting. The influence of health on happiness follows a similar pattern. You might assume that illness devastates happiness, but research shows the impact is surprisingly temporary, unless the condition involves continuous deterioration or chronic pain. Consider this hypothetical. Identical twins Lucy and Luke participate in a well-being study. After the study, Lucy suffers a car accident resulting in multiple broken bones and a permanently disabled leg. Meanwhile, Luke wins $10 million in the lottery. 2 years later, despite Lucy's permanent disability and Luke's newfound wealth, they report similar happiness levels to what they experienced before these life-changing events. The human capacity for adaptation is both remarkable and sobering. We adjust to both positive and negative changes far more quickly than we expect. So if money and health aren't the keys to happiness, what is? The answer lies in something we often take for granted: our relationships with other people. Research consistently shows that family and community connections have a more profound impact on happiness than money or health combined. People within strong family units and supportive communities experience significantly higher levels of well-being than those with dysfunctional family relationships or weak social ties. Marriage, in particular, plays a crucial role. Study after study finds a powerful correlation between happy marriages and high subjective well-being, while poor marriages correlate with misery regardless of financial or physical circumstances. A financially struggling person with a loving, supportive spouse and tight-knit community often reports greater happiness than an isolated billionaire, assuming the financial struggles aren't extreme and health issues aren't degenerative. But here's where human psychology gets really weird. We're terrible at predicting what makes us happy, even in the present moment. Researchers conducted a fascinating study with nearly 1,000 working women in Texas. These women documented a typical day and ranked 16 everyday activities by satisfaction level. The results were shocking. Spending time with their children ranked surprisingly low, just above browsing the internet and slightly below taking a nap. Only commuting to work ranked lower than their job satisfaction. The women found more joy in praying than shopping, and socializing with friends made them far happier than relaxing alone. Yet if you ask these same women what made them happiest, They'd likely mention career achievements, moments with their children, or relaxation. Activities that, when measured in real time, didn't actually produce the highest satisfaction levels. The irony is profound. People derive more pleasure from thinking about certain experiences than from actually living them. This disconnect between perceived and actual happiness appears in romantic relationships too. College students who had recently started dating were asked to rate their daily satisfaction with their relationship, sex life, and overall happiness for 2 weeks. Later, they reflected on those same 2 weeks. 6 months later, researchers checked which relationships had survived. Here's the kicker. Daily happiness ratings were poor predictors of relationship longevity. Instead, retrospective assessments, how people remembered feeling during that period, were much more accurate predictors of which couples stayed together. Memory, it turns out, is a powerful happiness editor. The passage of time flattens emotional fluctuations, creating rosier recollections of past experiences than what we actually felt day to day. Psychologists Ed Diener and Martin Seligman studied over 200 people extensively and found that the happiest individuals shared consistent characteristics. They were more content with their life situations, less prone to prolonged sadness or extreme euphoria, and crucially, they had more friends and spent less time alone. One experiment had over 100 participants wear wristwatches that beeped randomly throughout the day, prompting them to record their current happiness levels. Extroverts consistently reported higher happiness than introverts. People with more than 5 friends were nearly 50% more likely to consider themselves very happy compared to those with fewer friends. The research on solitude is particularly striking. Being alone produces so little happiness that many people prefer socializing with their boss, rather than spending time by themselves. From a neurological perspective, this social connection to happiness is visible in brain scans. Neuroscientist Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin has used brain imaging to reveal that happier people show more activity in their left prefrontal cortex. This brain region helps regulate negative emotions from the amygdala and maintains focus on positive goals despite challenges. People with greater left prefrontal cortex activity are less disturbed by frightening or disgusting images, and they recover more quickly from distressing events. It's essentially the brain's internal sunshine, and autopsies reveal that chronic depression often correlates with significant shrinkage in this region. Now let's dive into the chemical puppet master, controlling much of your happiness, dopamine. This neurotransmitter is simultaneously your brain's greatest ally and its most dangerous enemy. Dopamine serves as your brain's reward system, released in specific regions known as pleasure centers. When dopamine floods these areas, you experience euphoria, a natural high that occurs during exercise, gambling, sexual activity, or eating delicious food. Evolutionarily, dopamine's primary purpose was survival, motivating you to seek food to prevent starvation and find mates to ensure reproduction. Without dopamine, our species might never have survived. But here's where modern life becomes problematic. The pathways that trigger dopamine release can now be artificially stimulated, often leading to addiction and unhappiness disguised as pleasure. Social media platforms represent the most sophisticated dopamine manipulation system ever created. Every notification, every like, every comment is carefully engineered to trigger dopamine release, ensuring you remain engaged for as long as possible. The longer you stay online, the more revenue these platforms generate. They've essentially turned your brain's survival mechanism into a profit center. This same manipulation occurs with pornography and gambling, activities that can become exceptionally addictive due to their dopamine triggering effects. The modern portrayal of happiness often revolves around these instant dopamine fixes. Yet paradoxically, this pursuit leads to long-term dissatisfaction and genuine unhappiness. The power of dopamine to create real addiction is terrifying. Research from Tulane University gave participants the ability to electrically stimulate their own brain's pleasure centers. The results were shocking. Participants chose to stimulate themselves an average of 40 times per minute, often prioritizing this artificial pleasure over basic needs like food, even when they were hungry. This isn't just laboratory curiosity. It has real-world consequences. In 2005, Lee Seung-seop from South Korea died after a 58-hour marathon video gaming session. He consumed virtually no food or water and completely deprived himself of sleep. The investigation revealed that heart failure from exhaustion and dehydration caused his death. He was only 28 years old. Seung-seop's tragic story illustrates how dopamine can hijack our survival instincts, making artificial pleasures more compelling than life-sustaining activities. To reclaim control over your emotional well-being, you need to understand how dopamine affects your daily life. Are you forming unhealthy attachments to your phone? Becoming excessively engrossed in television? Investing too much time in video games? Each person harbors certain addictions, some obvious, others insidious. Sometimes the addiction isn't tied to an activity, but to patterns of thought. Identifying and addressing these dopamine-driven behaviors is crucial for managing your emotions and preventing them from stealing your genuine happiness. The key is recognizing that we're not compelled to respond to every dopamine trigger. We can choose not to compulsively scroll through social media feeds just because they provide quick dopamine hits. Understanding this chemical manipulation is the first step toward reclaiming authentic happiness. And hey, if your brain's lighting up right now and you're thinking, why didn't I learn this sooner? Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen. It's the digital equivalent of giving your brain a high five. And hit that subscribe button. Your future self will thank you. Here's something that might blow your mind. You can actually be too happy. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but excessive happiness can be genuinely dangerous, leading to poor decision-making and even life-threatening behavior. We tend to think of happiness like sunshine or food, essential for well-being. But just as obesity and melanoma show us that even beneficial things can harm us when consumed in excess, researchers are discovering that people can experience too much happiness, the wrong types of happiness, and pursue happiness at inappropriate times using ineffective methods. This isn't advocating for perpetual gloom, but rather encouraging a balanced perspective on emotions and fostering acceptance of feelings traditionally labeled as negative. The term negative itself perpetuates the misconception that challenging emotions like sadness, anger, or anxiety are inherently bad when they actually serve important functions. Being excessively happy can cause you to overlook significant threats and dangers. Extreme happiness increases risky behaviors, excessive drinking, binge eating, neglecting birth control, drug use. Moreover, an overabundance of carefree enthusiasm combined with a lack of more measured emotions can signal manic behavior, a serious symptom of psychological disorders. High levels of happiness can also make people more rigid in their thinking. Mood significantly impacts how our brains process information. When life feels good and familiar, we tend not to overthink challenging issues. This explains why excessively positive people can sometimes be less creative than those maintaining moderate levels of positive emotion. When everything feels perfect, people make quicker conclusions and resort to stereotypes more readily. This manifests in what psychologists call the halo effect, wrongly assuming that a charming stranger at a party is kind and trustworthy simply due to their appearance, or presuming that a bespectacled middle-aged man with a briefcase is more intelligent than a younger woman in bright clothing. Quick judgments like these demonstrate a tendency to discount additional information when initial perceptions are positive. Happy people often miss red flags that more cautious individuals would notice. Conversely, emotions we consider negative encourage more deliberate and systematic cognitive processing. People in slightly negative moods are less prone to hasty conclusions, instead focusing on subtle details that make significant differences in various scenarios. They examine facts with fresh, creative insights, becoming less gullible and more appropriately skeptical. It's no coincidence that famous fictional detectives are portrayed with grumpy dispositions. Think Sherlock Holmes or Detective Columbo. Meanwhile, carefree high school students are rarely depicted as valedictorians. A slightly downcast mood often leads to more attentive, accommodating thinking, prompting thorough situation analysis and fostering creativity. Someone in a poor mood might question why a new acquaintance is hiding their hand, while highly happy individuals might overlook significant warning signs, favoring ease and comfort even when aspects of situations are dubious. Here's another paradox. Actively pursuing happiness often contradicts happiness itself. Genuine happiness arises from engaging in activities for their own enjoyment, not for external outcomes, even outcomes as seemingly positive as seeking happiness. Pursuing happiness creates expectations, and expectations frequently lead to disappointment when unmet. This explains why holidays and family gatherings sometimes fall short of expectations, becoming disappointing rather than joyful experiences. The pressure to be happy during these events can actually prevent authentic happiness from occurring. Researchers demonstrated this in a fascinating experiment. Participants read a fake newspaper article extolling happiness virtues, while a control group read an article without mentioning happiness. Both groups then watched film clips classified as either happy or sad. Those who had read about happiness advantages reported feeling less happy after watching the happy film than the control group watching the same content. The emphasis on valuing happiness heightened expectations, ultimately leading to disappointment. In another study, participants listened to Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, a piece that initially caused public outrage due to its discordant nature. Some participants were instructed to feel as happy as possible while listening. These individuals rated themselves as less happy afterward compared to a control group not focusing on achieving happiness. The aggressive pursuit of happiness often creates isolating effects, reinforcing loneliness among those who rank happiness high on their priority lists. This cultural obsession with happiness can actually make us less happy. So if money has limitations, relationships are complex, and pursuing happiness directly backfires, what's the real key to genuine well-being? According to renowned psychologist Martin Seligman, the answer lies in something that might sound old-fashioned: character. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. The impact of factors we typically associate with happiness, health, climate, intelligence, education, even race, accounts for only about 8 to 15% of our overall happiness. Think about that. The fundamental elements that shape who we are and our life circumstances contribute less than 15% to our well-being. This finding offers tremendous hope for anyone who believes their specific circumstances prevent them from achieving happiness. If external factors play such a small role, what fills the remaining 85 to 92%? Seligman argues that true happiness and life satisfaction come from gradually cultivating character, a concept that might seem archaic in our modern world. Character comprises universal virtues found across every culture and throughout historical literature: wisdom, knowledge, courage, love, humanity, justice, temperance, and spirituality. We embody these virtues by developing personal strengths like originality, valor, integrity, loyalty, kindness, and fairness. While character might seem unscientific, Seligman demonstrates that character traits and personal strengths can be measured and developed, making them applicable to rigorous psychological research. There's a crucial distinction between talents and strengths. Talents are innate abilities that allow us to excel naturally. You're either born with musical ability or you're not. Strengths, however, result from conscious choice and development. We can choose to become more honest, more courageous, more compassionate. This distinction explains why we find more inspiration in people who overcome significant challenges than in those who succeed effortlessly through natural talent. When we combine will and determination with whatever talents we possess, we experience genuine pride in our accomplishments, the same pride we feel when acknowledged for virtues like honesty or courage. Talents reveal our genetic makeup, but virtues and developed strengths reflect who we choose to become as individuals. This is why developing what Seligman calls signature strengths, the character traits that come most naturally to us and that we can develop most fully, leads to authentic happiness and life satisfaction. Seligman created a questionnaire to help people identify their signature strengths, then recommends focusing development efforts on these areas rather than trying to fix weaknesses. The most fulfilling and successful life outcomes emerge from building on our natural strengths rather than attempting to become well-rounded by improving our weaknesses. This approach to happiness through character development explains why some people with seemingly disadvantaged circumstances, poor health, limited financial resources, challenging family situations, still report high levels of life satisfaction. They found meaning and purpose through developing their character, regardless of external circumstances. The character approach also explains why many wealthy, healthy, successful people report feeling empty or unfulfilled. They focused on external achievements while neglecting internal development. Without a strong character foundation, external success feels hollow. This isn't about becoming a saint or achieving moral perfection. It's about identifying your natural strengths. Maybe you're naturally curious, naturally brave, naturally kind, and then intentionally developing these traits. The happiness that emerges from this process is more sustainable and satisfying than happiness based on external circumstances or fleeting pleasures. This brings us to a fascinating question that challenges our understanding of happiness itself. Do animals experience happiness the way we do? The answer reveals important insights about human happiness and consciousness. For sentient beings, emotions provide a constant backdrop to experience, coloring every moment with pleasure or discomfort. However, happiness extends beyond immediate emotional states. According to psychological research, happiness is a persistent sense that everything is fundamentally okay, an evaluation of one's entire life that transcends daily emotional fluctuations. This type of happiness can endure temporary adversities and encompasses more than just joyous moments. It can include periods of challenge, disruption, and hardship. Think of someone mourning a loved one who still maintains an underlying sense that their life has meaning and value. That's happiness in the deeper psychological sense. Human happiness research reveals three core components: life satisfaction, positive affect, and negative affect. Joy represents the emotional element, while satisfaction involves cognitive reflection, consciously evaluating how successful you perceive your life to be. When considering animal happiness, definition becomes problematic. While animals certainly experience emotions like joy and pleasure, the scientific community rarely uses the term happiness when discussing animal well-being. This hesitation stems from the prevailing belief that animals live predominantly in the present moment, experiencing only immediate emotions without the ability to evaluate their lives comprehensively. This perspective suggests that animals lack the reflective capacity central to human happiness, the ability to step back and assess their life's overall trajectory, meaning, and success. Consequently, while animals can experience happiness in the form of momentary joy and pleasure, they may not share our capacity for the nuanced, reflective sense of happiness that characterizes human well-being. This distinction is crucial for understanding human happiness. Our ability to reflect on our lives, to find meaning in our experiences, to evaluate our progress toward goals. These cognitive abilities that animals may lack are precisely what make human happiness both more complex and more achievable through conscious effort. The animal question also highlights why character development works for human happiness. Animals respond to immediate stimuli and environmental conditions, but humans can choose to interpret their experiences, find meaning in suffering, and derive satisfaction from personal growth regardless of external circumstances. This cognitive component of happiness explains why two people in identical situations can report vastly different levels of life satisfaction. It's not just about what happens to us, but how we interpret and integrate those experiences into our understanding of who we are and what our lives mean. The ongoing scientific inquiry into animal emotions continues to challenge our understanding of consciousness and happiness across species. As research progresses, we may discover that animals have more sophisticated emotional lives than we currently recognize, but the evidence suggests that the type of reflective happiness humans experience requires cognitive abilities that may be uniquely human. Before we wrap up, let's address a crucial factor that complicates everything we've discussed: cultural differences in happiness. The pursuit of happiness isn't universal. Different cultures define and pursue happiness in fundamentally different ways. In North America, happiness is predominantly associated with personal success, individual achievement, and pleasure. We celebrate independence, self-reliance, and personal fulfillment. The American dream itself is built around individual happiness through material success and personal freedom. But in East Asian cultures, happiness aligns more with social harmony, group cohesion, and collective well-being. Individual happiness that comes at the expense of group harmony is often viewed negatively. Chinese Americans, for instance, often lean toward contentment and stability, while European Americans gravitate toward excitement and stimulation. Japanese culture emphasizes loyalty and its associated emotions, including what Western cultures might consider negative emotions like guilt or shame when they serve group cohesion. This contrasts sharply with American culture, which celebrates more individualistic emotions like pride or righteous anger. These cultural differences create a happiness trap for many people. You might be genuinely happy within your cultural framework, but feel inadequate when measured against different cultural standards. A Japanese person who finds deep satisfaction in group harmony might feel deficient when exposed to American concepts of individual achievement and personal excitement. This cultural component explains some of the paradoxes in global happiness research. Countries that emphasize collective well-being often report higher average happiness levels than those focused on individual achievement, even when individual opportunities and freedoms are more limited. The implications for personal happiness are profound. Achieving genuine happiness within your cultural context requires aligning your feelings and goals with your culture's interpretation of what happiness means. Fighting against your cultural framework, trying to pursue individualistic happiness in a collectivist culture, or seeking group harmony in an individualistic culture, often leads to internal conflict and reduced well-being. This doesn't mean you're trapped by your culture, but it does mean that understanding your cultural context is crucial for developing a sustainable approach to happiness. Sometimes the path to genuine happiness involves finding ways to honor both your personal nature and your cultural background. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the science of happiness. And what have we learned? The picture is far more complex and fascinating than simple cultural wisdom suggests. We've discovered that Americans, despite their obsession with positivity and their consumption of 2/3 of the world's antidepressants, rank only 23rd in global happiness surveys. We've learned that money can buy happiness, but only up to a point, and that we're remarkably bad at predicting what will make us happy, even in the present moment. We've explored how our brains are being hijacked by dopamine-triggering technologies designed to keep us engaged rather than genuinely satisfied. We've seen how too much happiness can actually be dangerous, leading to poor decision-making and risky behavior, while supposedly negative emotions often promote more careful, creative thinking. We've examined the surprising truth that external factors, health, wealth, climate, intelligence, education, account for less than 15% of our happiness, while character development and social connections provide the real foundation for life satisfaction. We've discovered that animals might experience joy and pleasure, but likely lack the reflective capacity that makes human happiness both more complex and more achievable through conscious effort. And we've seen how cultural differences in defining happiness create additional layers of complexity in our pursuit of well-being. Perhaps most importantly, we've learned that the direct pursuit of happiness often backfires. Like trying to fall asleep by concentrating on sleeping, or trying to be spontaneous by planning spontaneity, the harder we chase happiness, the more elusive it becomes. The resolution to the happiness paradox lies not in pursuing happiness directly, but in building the conditions that allow happiness to emerge naturally, developing meaningful relationships, cultivating character strengths, engaging in activities for their own sake rather than for external rewards, and accepting that a balanced emotional life includes both positive and negative feelings. The science of happiness teaches us that authentic well-being comes not from constant positivity or external achievements, but from the patient work of becoming the person we're capable of being while maintaining genuine connections with others. It's not about optimizing our emotional state, but about building a life of meaning, purpose, and genuine connection. In our dopamine-hijacked, positivity-obsessed, achievement-focused world, Perhaps the most radical act is to stop chasing happiness and start building character. The happiness that emerges from this approach might be quieter than the euphoria promised by our culture, but it's more sustainable, more genuine, and more deeply satisfying. The science is clear. Happiness isn't a destination to reach, but a byproduct of how we choose to live. And that choice, thankfully, is always available to us. I'm your host, Joss Blake, and this has been the Empowerment Hour. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the science of happiness. If this episode sparked something in you, an insight, a question, or just a moment of reflection, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. And for those of you who crave more smart, bite-sized knowledge on everything from psychology and neuroscience to philosophy, purpose, and productivity, check out Skoob, your go-to AI-powered podcast studio app. Download it now from the App Store or Play Store and start learning faster, deeper, and smarter. Until next time, remember, the best way to find happiness is to stop chasing it and start building the kind of life that naturally creates it.